Welcome, seekers of excellence. Before we begin, I want you to take a deep breath and feel the weight of your own fatigue, that tightness in your shoulders, that mental fog after a 10-hour day. The world calls that the price of success. I call it evidence of a crime. As a psychologist, I have studied the architecture of the human spirit. As a student of Machiavelli, I have studied the cold mechanics of power. And here is the brutal intersection. You have been conditioned to love your chains, because you were told they were made of gold. Since you were a child, the hard work myth has been whispered into your ear by parents, teachers, and bosses. They sold you a linear equation. Input of effort equals output of wealth. It sounds fair. It sounds moral. It appeals to your sense of justice. But look at the world around you. If effort were the secret to wealth, the single mother working 3 jobs would be a billionaire, and the construction worker under the midday sun would own the city. They aren't, and they aren't because the equation is a lie designed to keep the gears of the system turning while you remain a replaceable part. The Machiavellian insight, virtue as a shackle. Machiavelli famously wrote that the man who tries to be good in all matters will come to ruin among so many who are not good. In our context, being good means being the hardest worker, the first one in, and the last one out. From a psychological perspective, this is a trap of conscientiousness. You are being a good person, but you are being a bad strategist. While you are busy perfecting a task, the person with the Machiavellian mind is busy perfecting the system that owns your task. Power doesn't flow to the one who does the work. Power flows to the one who authorizes the work and captures the value. If you are working so hard that you have no time to position yourself, you have effectively opted out of the game of power. You have chosen the morality of the slave over the pragmatism of the prince. The psychological sedative. Why we volunteer for the grind. Why do we fall for it? Why do we brag about how busy we are? Psychologically, busyness is a sedative. It is a form of avoidance behavior. As long as you are working hard, you don't have to face the terrifying reality that you might be heading in the wrong direction. It is much easier to run 10 miles in a circle than it is to sit still, look at a map, and realize you are in the wrong country. We use hard work to justify our lack of progress. We tell ourselves, I'm doing everything I can. You are doing everything you were told. There is a massive difference. One leads to a pension and a gold watch. The other leads to an empire. The psychological sedative. Why we volunteer for the grind. Why do we fall for it? Why do we brag about how busy we are? Psychologically, busyness is a sedative. It is a form of avoidance behavior. As long as you are working hard, you don't have to face the terrifying reality that you might be heading in the wrong direction. It is much easier to run 10 miles in a circle than it is to sit still, look at a map, and realize you are in the wrong country. We use hard work to justify our lack of progress. We tell ourselves, I'm doing everything I can. You are doing everything you were told. There is a massive difference. One leads to a pension and a gold watch. The other leads to an empire. The biology of the treadmill, the neurological trap of the busy brain. Now that we've identified the lie, we must look at the laboratory of your own mind. Why is it so hard to stop? Why does your brain crave the very work that keeps you powerless? The answer lies in a biological phenomenon I call the dopamine of the small win. You see, The human brain didn't evolve for the 21st century economy. It evolved for survival. When you complete a small menial task, like answering an email, filing a report, or finishing a physical chore, your brain releases a tiny squirt of dopamine. It feels good. It feels like progress. But in the world of power and wealth, this is junk. Food productivity, dopamine loop, and the death of strategy. Think of it like this. If you eat candy all day, you feel full, but you are malnourished. The hard worker is someone who spends 10 hours a day eating productivity candy. You finish 50 small tasks. Your brain stays high on dopamine, and you go home exhausted but satisfied. But Machiavelli would ask, what have you conquered today? The answer is nothing. You've simply maintained the status quo. By chasing these tiny dopamine hits, you have fallen into the tactical hell. This is a psychological state where your executive function, the part of your brain that thinks about 5-year plans, investments, and leverage, is hijacked by the basal ganglia, the part of your brain that loves routine and easy rewards. While you are getting high on being busy, the architect is sitting in a quiet room, enduring the discomfort of silence, because he is waiting for the one big move that will yield 0% more than your 50 small tasks. The cortisol shackle. Why stress makes you submissive. Let's talk about power. Power requires a calm, observant mind, but hard work creates chronic stress, which floods your system with cortisol. Psychologically, high cortisol levels do something terrifying. They increase your risk aversion. When you are stressed and overworked, your brain goes into survival mode. In this state, you cannot think about starting a business, negotiating a massive raise, or pivoting your career. You are too scared to lose the little you have. The system loves a stressed worker, because a stressed worker is a compliant worker. You are too biologically depleted to be a threat to the hierarchy. You have been pacified by your own exhaustion. This is the Machiavellian masterstroke. To keep a man a slave, don't chain his feet. Simply keep him so busy and stressed that his own brain refuses to contemplate freedom. 1.3 Breaking the occupational reflex to move from poor to powerful. You must develop what I call the Machiavellian pause. Most of you have an occupational reflex. Someone gives you a task, and you immediately start working. You don't ask if it's the most effective use of your life. You just start. You are like a Pavlovian dog responding to a bell. We need to rewire your brain to crave high-leverage discomfort, instead of low-value comfort. Real wealth. Building work, like learning a complex new skill, building a system, or negotiating a deal, doesn't give you a dopamine hit right away. In fact, it's usually frustrating and quiet. If you want to be in the 1%, you have to stop acting like the 99%. You have to stop being a dopamine junkie for the grind, and start being a strategist for the result. You must learn to sit with the boredom of not being busy so that you can be effective. Before we continue, I want you to look at your to-do list for tomorrow. How many of those items are just candy to make you feel productive? And which one item is the prince's move? The thing that actually changes your position in the world. If you don't find that one thing, you aren't working. You're just vibrating in place, and the machine is feeding on your vibration. We shift from the internal biology of the brain to the external mechanics of power. This is where we look into the mirror and see ourselves through the eyes of the masters of the game. We shift from the internal biology of the brain to the external mechanics of power. This is where we look into the mirror and see ourselves through the eyes of the masters of the game. The Machiavellian mirror, the psychology of social positioning, and the useful tool trap. Welcome to the second hour. Now that you understand how your brain is being hijacked by the grind, we must address a harder truth: how the world sees you. Niccolò Machiavelli wrote that everyone sees what you appear to be, but few feel what you are. In the marketplace of life, if you appear to be the hardest worker, you are not viewed as a future leader. You are viewed as a utility. Think about a hammer. A hammer is essential, it is reliable, it works hard. But do you ever promote the hammer to the position of the architect? Number you keep it in the toolbox until you need something struck. This is the psychology of social positioning. If you are too useful where you are, you have become a victim of your own competence. The law of substitutability. Let's talk about your value. In psychology, we look at the perceived irreplaceability of an individual. Most people work hard at tasks that are highly substitutable. If you spend 10 hours a day doing something that 1,000 other people could do with a month of training, your power is effectively zero. You are a commodity. And the first rule of power is this: commodities have no leverage. Machiavelli warned that a prince should never make another powerful if it diminishes his own standing. By being the perfect employee who never complains and does all the grunt work, you are actually making your boss powerful while making yourself invisible. You have made it too easy for the system to function without rewarding you. To gain power, you must move from being a service to being a solution that only you can provide. The good soldier complex. Why do we strive to be the good soldier? It's a psychological phenomenon called the approval-seeking reflex. We were raised to want the A on the paper, the pat on the head, the great job from the manager. But look at the Machiavellian mirror. The people at the top do not seek approval. They seek results and resources. When you work 80 hours a week to prove yourself, you are signaling subordinate status. You are saying, I am willing to trade my life force for your validation. The architect, however, understands the psychology of absence. He knows that if he is always available, always working, and always on, his value drops. To be powerful, you must be scarce. You must be the one who thinks, who directs, and who occasionally withdraws, so that the system realizes it cannot breathe without your strategy, not your sweat. From being used to being essential, how do we flip the script? We use a technique I call strategic incompetence. Now, don't misunderstand me. I am not telling you to be bad at your job. I am telling you to be spectacularly bad at the low-value tasks, so that you are never asked to do them again. If you are too good at filing, you will file forever. If you are too good at the mundane, you will be buried by it. Machiavelli noted that a wise ruler uses others to perform messy or tiring tasks so he can keep his hands clean for the big decisions. You must do the same. You must delegate, automate, or eliminate the hard work so you can focus on high-status activities. High-status activities are things like negotiating the terms of a deal, creating a new system or product, building a network of influential allies. If your day is not filled with these, you are not climbing the ladder. You are just polishing the rungs for the person behind you. Before we continue, I want you to ask yourself, if I were my boss, would I ever promote me, or would I keep me exactly where I am because I am doing too much work for too little pay? If the answer scares you, good. That fear is the beginning of wisdom. Stop being the good soldier and start being the general who knows which battles are worth his energy. We will address the side effect of the hard work lifestyle, the shrinking of your mental horizon. This is where we move from the social game to the internal battle for your vision, the scarcity mindset and the death of vision, reclaiming your cognitive surplus. Welcome back. We have looked at your brain, and we have looked at the mirror. Now, we must look at the horizon. Machiavelli once observed that men are so simple, and so much shadowed by their present needs, that he who deceives will always find one who will let himself be deceived. The greatest deception is that by focusing on the now, the urgent task, the immediate deadline, you are securing your future. In reality, you are killing it. In psychology, we call this the scarcity mindset, the tunnel vision effect. When you are overworked, your brain enters a state of cognitive tunneling. Imagine you are walking through a dark forest with a tiny flashlight. You are so focused on the 1 foot of ground in front of you, making sure you don't trip, that you fail to see the massive highway just 10 yards to your left. This is what working hard does to your bank account. Because you are exhausted, your bandwidth, Your mental capacity to solve problems and see opportunities is used up by survival. You don't have the energy to research the new market, to learn the new software, or to realize that your industry is dying. You are running 100 miles an hour toward a cliff because you're too busy looking at your feet to see the drop off. The Machiavellian grand strategy: a prince does not win by being the best fighter. He wins by having the best map. To have a map, you need distance. Power flows to those who can zoom out, while the laborer is thinking about his next paycheck, the immediate, and the manager is thinking about the next quarter, the short term. The architect is thinking about the next decade, the grand strategy. If you are working hard 40, 50, or 60 hours a week, you have zero strategic distance. You have no time to think, and if you have no time to think, you have no power. Machiavelli would tell you that it is better to spend 4 days watching the enemy and 1 hour striking, than 5 days blindly swinging your sword in the dark. Your hard work is the blind swinging. Your vision is the strike. Reclaiming the cognitive surplus. How do we fix this? We must create a cognitive surplus. This is the psychological buffer that allows for creativity and wealth building. The wealthiest people on earth are often the most idle in appearance. Why? Because they are protecting their bandwidth for high-leverage decisions. One great decision is worth more than 1,000 hours of hard work. To reclaim your vision, you must practice the art of doing nothing. I am serious. You must schedule strategy time where your phone is off, and you are doing nothing but thinking. For a hard worker, this feels like a sin. You feel guilty. You feel lazy. That guilt is the sound of your chains rattling. That guilt is the psychological conditioning, trying to pull you back onto the treadmill. You must kill that guilt. You must realize that your laziness is actually the high-level processing required to find the prince's move. The one action that makes all your previous hard work obsolete. Before we proceed, I want you to perform a bandwidth audit. If I gave you $1 million opportunity right now that required 20 hours of deep thought to execute, would you have the mental energy to do it? If the answer is no, I am too tired from my job, then your job isn't just taking your time, it's stealing your future. It's time to stop being a doer and start being a seer. We will address the most painful irony of the professional world. We are going to discuss why your excellence is actually the ceiling preventing your rise. This is the cold, Machiavellian truth about why Employee of the Month is often a title given to those the system never intends to set free. The indispensable slave trap, the psychology of utility, and the Peter Principle. We are entering the heart of the power struggle. Many of you listening are high achievers. You pride yourself on being the reliable one, the fixer, the person who handles the mess. You think this makes you powerful, but as a psychologist, I must tell you, you are falling into the utility trap. Machiavelli understood that the more useful a servant is in their current position, the less reason a prince has to move them. If you are a perfect engine for the ship, the captain will never make you a navigator. Why would he? He would lose his engine. The Peter Principle and the Excellence Prison in Psychology and Management. We talk about the Peter Principle, which suggests people are promoted to their level of incompetence. But there is a darker version I see daily, the Excellence Prison. If you are so good at your hard work that the department would collapse without you, you have effectively committed professional suicide. You are now too expensive to replace and too vital to promote. Your boss will praise you, give you a 3% raise, and a plaque. Anything to keep you in that seat. They are using positive reinforcement to keep you in a cage of your own competence. You aren't being rewarded for your hard work. You are being contained by it. A Machiavellian strategist knows that to rise, you must be disposable in the tasks that don't matter, and essential in the decisions that do. The savior complex and emotional manipulation. Why do we keep doing it? Because the system uses your own psychology against you. It plays on your need for significance. When your boss says, "I don't know what we'd do without you," your ego swells. You feel like a hero. But hero is just another word for sacrificial lamb. The system is using your emotional need for validation to get 150% output for 100% pay. Machiavelli warned that a leader must be wary of flatterers. In the modern world, flattery is the great job email that comes right before another 20 hours of unpaid overtime. To break free, you must stop being the rescuer. You must allow the system to feel its own friction. If you keep fixing every problem with your own sweat, the people at the top never see the need to change the system, or give you the resources and power you deserve. 4.3. The art of strategic withdrawal. To reclaim your power, you must practice the psychology of scarcity. Machiavelli noted that he who is the cause of another becoming powerful is the agent of his own destruction. By doing all the hard work, you are the cause of your boss's power. You must begin to withdraw your manual excellence. Start automating your tasks without telling anyone. Start delegating. Use that reclaimed time not to rest, but to position. Instead of doing the work, design the process. Instead of solving the problem, identify the person who can. Move from the person who does to the person who knows how it gets done. The world doesn't pay for effort. It pays for responsibility. The more work you do with your hands, the less responsibility you have for the outcome. The more you step back and direct the flow, the more power you command. Before we continue to our final hour, ask yourself this. Is your indispensability a badge of honor? Or is it a leash? If the company would fall apart if you took a month-long vacation, you aren't a leader. You're a high-functioning slave. It's time to become the architect who builds the machine rather than the gear that turns within it. This is the final movement of the Masterclass, the transition from theory to total psychological and strategic dominance. This is where we build the prince's blueprint, the architect's blueprint, the psychology of high-leverage wealth. We have reached the summit. We have dissected the brain, analyzed the mirror, expanded our vision, and broken the trap of utility. Now, we must build. Machiavelli wrote that there is no other way to guard yourself against flattery than by making men understand that telling you the truth will not offend you. The truth is this: the world is not a meritocracy of effort. It is a hierarchy of leverage. If you want to be rich and powerful, you must stop being a provider of labor and start being a provider of systems. This requires a final radical shift in your psychological identity. The Pareto pivot, the 80-20 psychology. You have heard of the Pareto principle, that 80% of results come from 20% of causes. But most people only understand this intellectually. They don't feel it in their bones. A psychologist sees the Pareto principle as a struggle against guilt. Your worker mind wants to give 100% effort to 100% of your tasks. It feels fair, but the Machiavellian mind knows that fairness is the consolation prize for the loser. To be an architect, you must be ruthlessly unfair with your time. You must identify the 20% of your activities, the strategic relationships, the high-value skills, the scalable assets, and give them your absolute best, while letting the other 80% wither or be done by someone else. You aren't being lazy. You are being economical with your genius. Decoupling. The great psychological divorce, the most profound psychological barrier to wealth, is the link between time and money. From the industrial age, we were trained to think, I work 1 hour, I get X dollars. This is the poor man's equation. It is inherently powerless, because your time is finite. You cannot work 0 hours in a day. The architect's equation is value plus scale times leverage equals wealth. Machiavelli would tell you to own the fortress, not to guard the gate. In modern terms, this means owning intellectual property, automation, or capital. When you build a system, a piece of software, a business process, an investment portfolio, it works 24 hours a day without getting tired, without needing dopamine, and without falling for the hard work trap. Your job is no longer to do the work. Your job is to manage the machine that does the work. The courage to be idle to maintain this power. You must develop the psychological shield of the elite. People will judge you. They will see you sitting, thinking, or walking in the park at 2 p.m., and they will call you lucky or lazy. Let them. Machiavelli said it is better to be feared than loved. In the modern world, it is better to be misunderstood than underpaid. The architect knows that a single hour of deep thought, where you solve a problem that saves a company millions, is more virtuous than a year of back-breaking labor. Reclaim your right to silence. Reclaim your right to be the one who directs the lightning, rather than the one who is struck by it. The ascension, my friends. The journey ends here. But your life as a strategist begins now. You came here as hard workers, burdened by the weight of a system that didn't belong to you. You leave here as architects. Do not go back to your desk and try harder. That is the old path. Instead, go back and look for the leverage. Ask yourself every morning, am I being the hammer, or am I being the architect? Stop seeking the gold star of the employee. Start seeking the crown of the prince. The treadmill is still running behind you, but you have stepped off. Do not look back. The world is waiting for the one who has the courage to stop sweating and start ruling.
I am your guide from Mindless Success Academy. The chains are gone. Now go and build your empire.